Welcome to the Community Connections podcast with Jeff Newgard. Jeff is the president and CEO of Bank of Idaho. As an experienced community leader with a demonstrated history in the banking industry, he is fascinated with authentic and real conversations and establishing long-term relationships. Community Connections with Jeff Newgard podcast is Mr. Newgard's opportunity to do just that. Connect with local business owners and leaders to hear their stories. Jeff's slogan is "People bank with people." With that, sit back, relax, and listen to the unique stories of your neighbors, colleagues, friends, and community connections. Today, our guest is Dr. David Adler, president of the Alturas Institute. The Alturas Institute is a nonprofit organization created to promote the Constitution, gender equality, and civic education. Adler has lectured nationally and internationally and is widely published on the Constitution, presidential power, and the Bill of Rights.
Well, Dr. Adler, thank you so much for taking the time today to meet with me and tell a little bit of your story.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Jeff.
And
Thank you.
It's a little strange to call you. I call you Dr. Adler quite a bit, but to me, you're Dave. You're my friend.
Right, that's right. Yes.
And as we were talking, how many interviews do you think? You were saying hundreds.
Oh, I think over the years I've probably done hundreds with newspapers and radios and television stations.
Well, you are a renowned constitutional law expert. Everybody knows that. But we're going to talk about something really important, and that's golf.
I love it. I love it already. That's really good.
We love nerding out together, as we call it, in golf.
Analyzing swings.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I wanted to tap into that a little bit because I think it tells a lot, really, about you, the real you. Tell me, where did you get this passion? I mean, to call it a passion is an understatement. Mm-hmm. So where did that all start?
Well, the passion for golf started early.
Yeah.
When I was 14 years old, a friend's father took us out to play. It was a Saturday morning at a 9-hole course in my hometown in Niles, Michigan.
Yeah.
And I'd never touched a club before. And on the first hole, I got a 20. 20 on a short par 4.
Oh, no.
So I shouldn't have thought that I'd be much interested in the game, but I'll tell you,
no shanks?
And fortunately, no shanks. Probably plenty of whiffs. Lots of ground balls, funny looking shots. But that day sold me on the game. And so I became passionate about it very quickly and started practicing like the devil.
And you played competitively?
Yeah, I played competitively. I really enjoy tournament golf. I don't do much of that at all anymore. It's just fun golf, lots of rounds with you and other buddies. But I love the game. I think it teaches us a lot about life, about character. We're confined by rules. We follow norms. We follow the etiquette of the game, so important. And as you well know, there's a real spirit to the game of golf, almost a religious spirit. And so it's relaxing, it's insightful, it illuminates life in many ways.
And it's one of those games that you never arrive.
Right.
It's like life. I mean, you never, once you think you've arrived, you're done.
That's so true. You never shoot the round that you want to shoot. You dream of the round, but you never are there, no matter how well you play, because even if you play an excellent game, you know there's a shot or two that you wish you could have over, and that keeps you coming back. And I think, to your point, it keeps you striving to do better in the game, and that is very much the case of life. We're always trying to improve, trying to do a little bit better and achieve a little bit more.
Yeah. So when was your first tournament where you felt like you really made a difference? You were really doing well.
So that would have been when I was 15 years old.
Wow.
A year
after.
And it was in a JC tournament back in my hometown.
Yeah.
And I finished second. Second by playing pretty well the last 9 holes. And I thought, well, I've just competed against players who played for a long time, and maybe I can do pretty well. So that inspired me to keep at it. But by then I was hooked, and I was already hitting hundreds of golf balls a day and playing as many holes as the light would permit me to play.
Yeah.
I was obsessed.
Yeah.
To put it passionately, to state it, passion is a kind statement. I was obsessed.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So you and I kind of share that passion, obsession with the game, and
We do.
I always figured I had to work harder than the next guy, and yeah, I wasn't going to let light stand in my way to practice.
Right.
And
Exactly. And where I played, there was
Yeah.
a street light
oh,
hanging over the small little putting green at this
Really?
municipal course. So sometimes I would wait for my parents to pick me up at 10:30 or 11 at night. It was
Really?
okay. I was by myself and I had a light. It allowed me to putt for hours and
yeah.
hours.
And your parents were okay with that?
It was safe. It was very safe, and so it worked out just well.
Yeah, when other kids are out going to parties, you were under the street light.
That's right. Working on the 3 and 4 footers.
Oh, and they
Yeah.
we're still working on them.
I need more practice, right? You and I have spent a lot of hours on the putting green. We need to spend more hours, right?
I know, I can't believe the amount of time we've spent trying different putters and grips and stances and head
Yes.
positions and
You name it, looking for every different way to try to make the ball go in the hole.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
ever never ending pursuit.
Yeah.
And so you also coached,
Mhm.
which I think is that's a gift
Well,
that you give others.
thanks. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So I did. I started the women's golf program at Idaho State
Yeah.
University and then revived the men's program. And I did that for a few years. It was a lot of fun. I love golf and I enjoy providing some instruction, and I just wanted to see the success of the team. So in our second year, we actually won the Big Sky Golf Championship. It was pretty
Wow.
fun. Yeah.
In your second year.
In our second year, we almost won our first year. We had a lot of talented players, and with a little good fortune, we won the championship. And
Yeah.
so it was a lot of fun. It was very nice. And as you know, it's just so much fun to study golf instructional books and analyze swings. And so this was very much part of my lifelong passion with the
Yeah.
game. Just another manifestation of my
Sure.
love for it. Yeah.
Well, you've told me in our stories in the past about the impact. I mean, some of these people were really impacted by the game and by the interactions that you had with them, just really developing them.
Yes.
You talked about a young lady in particular. Why don't you tell us?
Oh, there's
There's several.
I have I have several stories to share. There were a couple of women who joined the team that weren't particularly talented, but they loved it.
Yeah.
Their games developed over a few years, and they went on to coach college. A couple of others went on to become club pros. Another went on to
Wow.
play the minor tour in Canada.
Really?
So yeah, a lot of good stories, and I came to admire them very much. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what did you see as far as their development as people, as human beings?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I watched them grow up
Yeah.
over 3 or 4 years. They matured, and that was not only reflected in general maturity, but on trips they began to actually discuss some world events
Yes.
and wanted to talk about what the president was doing.
Yeah.
So I like that very much, and the fact that I was a professor,
Yeah.
I think inspired some of them to read more. And I probably read a few papers that they were writing for classes
Oh,
while we were
really?
on the road.
Oh.
Yeah, I wasn't providing professional editing services, but I took a glance or two, and I took an interest in what they were reading, whether it was for literature class or history or other
Yeah.
classes. So that helped to just establish a nice rapport.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your education and kind of how you got to where you are. I was thinking about this morning, and I kind of had to chuckle to myself. Is to become a constitutional law professor. I mean, you're not even an attorney. I mean, you don't even have that to fall back on, right?
Right, that's right. Yeah.
You have dedicated your study and your life to understanding the Constitution Where in the world where did that first strike you?
You know, it's a really interesting question. I can remember that in junior high, I had two great intellectual interests. One, for some reason, was in journalism, newspaper.
Yes.
And the other was in the Constitution, particularly the First Amendment, freedom of the press, freedom of speech.
Sure.
So the interest with journalism and the First Amendment, they were very much intertwined.
Yeah.
And I remember getting a great break as a 15-year-old when I was playing tennis in my hometown with a guy that had just moved into the area, and he was going to become editor of the newspaper.
Oh, wow.
And we had a nice tennis game, and afterward he asked about what I was interested in. I said newspapering, and the talk went a little further, and he said he was going to start a new program at our local paper, an intern in the newsroom. Would I be interested?
Wow.
So I pursued that, and and that opened a lot of doors. By the end of the summer, I was able to write short little articles on Little League Baseball and a few other sporting events, and I learned a ton. And I had great editors who helped teach me how to write. Sometimes it was painful because I would hear the news editor, after he'd read my article, yell, "Oh, Adler." And I knew that it wasn't a very good story, and there was a lot of red ink in it.
Yeah.
He was gruff. He fit the stereotype
Yeah.
of an old newspaper editor who had a bottle of some adult beverage in his desk drawer, used some rough language. I learned a lot. I was really appreciative of that. And so that ushered me into a career in journalism. I soon moved into news reporting, and then I was lucky enough to file some stories that won awards and ran in the New York Times and the Washington Post, some investigative pieces. So I loved that, and I had a chance to fulfill that.
How old were you at that point?
That's when I was 19 and 20, really, yeah.
In the New York Times?
Yes. And I remember at that point, and this will date me for your audience, but I remember that Walter Cronkite, the legendary anchor on CBS News, referred to a story that I had written that had traveled the wires from coast to coast. Didn't use my name, but he said, "A Niles Daily Star reporter today." So that was as close to fame as I'd ever gotten, right? Uncle Walter, as the most trusted man in America. So that was a great interest of mine, and I pursued it through majoring in college, and then went to the Salt Lake Tribune after graduation to take a job. But my interest in the Constitution remained high and probably unfulfilled. And so when I arrived in Salt Lake City to work at Salt Lake Tribune, I started sitting in on classes, constitutional law classes taught by an eminent professor named Francis Wormuth. And it didn't take me long before I realized this is what I want to do. So it wasn't long before I quit my job, enrolled in grad school, and started working under Professor Wormuth. We had a tremendous relationship.
Nice.
I was very, very fortunate. So I learned from the best.
So he was a mentor?
He was very much my mentor, yes. I was very lucky. He was widely regarded as one of the nation's top constitutional law scholars, so I learned from the best.
What do you think the number one or two things that you learned from him that you carry today?
There are a lot of them, but one certainly is the very concept of constitutionally limited government. That is a government that's required to adhere to the terms of the Constitution, and that at all events, it's very patriotic for Americans to exhibit a willingness to criticize their government, regardless of party, at any level, if the government is not adhering to the Constitution or at lower levels to ordinary laws, because that reflects the cornerstone of American constitutionalism, which is government has only that power granted to it by the people, and no authority under any circumstances to violate the law. That creates the public trust, and it's very much a two-way street, and people have an obligation to speak out, sometimes in dissent. And so this was a way that I was able to marry my interest in freedom of the press, free speech, and the Constitution. So,
so it was both worlds coming together for you.
Exactly right.
And I know that's still a passion today of yours.
Very much so. Very much so. So I enjoyed a nice trajectory, you might say, of my twin interests, and I was lucky to be able to pursue both of them, and still do. I still write newspaper columns.
That's
still speak out, and so I can put to good use the interest, the what I've learned all these years, and I still travel around the country and give lectures on the Constitution, and also throughout Idaho.
So as your mentor, beyond the Constitution, what kinds of things did he teach you?
Oh, as a gentleman, he belonged to the old school. He was a very distinguished old scholar. By the time I met him, he was slightly stooped.
Okay.
He hadn't taken any grad students for 13 years, and I remember going into his office one day and saying, well, Professor Wormuth, I really enjoy your classes. I think this is what I want my career to look like. Would you agree to be my advisor? And he sat forward and said, well, no, I haven't taken a student in 13 years. Why don't you go down the hall and see Professor so-and-so?
Yes.
So we resumed the conversation, and this was my journalistic training and my persistence.
Right.
So a few minutes later, I came back to the subject. I said, well, I understand what you say about going to see Professor so-and-so, but I really want to train under you. Would you consider that? And he leaned forward. He says, no, I'm too busy. I don't have the time. So we resumed the conversation.
You did.
Finally, this was the reporter in me, all my reporter's instincts. I asked him one more time. I said, well, I want to ask you one more time. I really want to train under you. I've read a number of your books and articles. I think this is for me. At that point, he leaned forward with a twinkle in his eye, and he said, what is it that they say in Alice in Wonderland? If you say something 3 times, it must be true. He said, I'll do it. I think he wanted to see that I was very persistent. And at that stage in his distinguished career, he wasn't interested in taking on somebody who wasn't persistent and seemingly dedicated. So I was so lucky because he spanned decades, both as a historian, political scientist, and a law professor. So unlike a lot of my peers in grad school at that time who would be advised to read in a certain area or focus on a couple of fields, his demands, his standards were so great that I became steeped in English law, in old American law. I spent all my Saturdays and Sundays at the University of Utah Law Library reading old law review articles that would probably put most people to sleep. But it fit my passion, so I didn't mind. So as a consequence, I consider myself to be very fortunate to have learned from the best. And so it was terrific. And as a human being, he exhibited very courtly behavior. Everybody was Mr. or Mrs., even his students.
Oh, really?
And
I think Mr. Adler?
Yeah, he called me Mr. Adler for a very long time. It was a long time until he called me Dave.
Really?
But he also, I think, took mercy on my impoverished status as a grad student, and he would invite me over to his house on Saturdays to mow his lawn, and then he and his wife would take me out to lunch. His lawn was about the size of the space between you and me. It took about 3 swipes with an old lawnmower, not a gasoline powered, but the old clip mower. Took 10 minutes, and then off to lunch we went. So, and then on weekdays when I would go talk to him, he would say in his courtly manner, would you permit me to buy you lunch today? And he would take me out. So we spent many hours talking about judicial figures, talking about the Constitution, old cases, literature. He detected my interest in biography. And he was very, very harsh. He had a very bright daughter who was a PhD candidate at Yale, where he taught for many years before he and his wife decided to move to Utah. And he one day shared with me, or rather complained, about the grief given to him by both his daughter and his wife when he agreed to read her dissertation in draft and marked it up. And there was a lot of red ink. Didn't display the kind of courtesy
Yes.
that probably they expected. So he wondered, what did I do wrong? They asked me to read it.
Right.
That was the nature of a standard. So I wrote my first couple of law review articles under his direction as a grad student. And I was so afraid when I would submit a draft.
Oh, I bet.
So afraid of what he was going to say. But he was very, very bright, a very good writer, steeped in knowledge of the law and government.
Yeah.
So I was happy to hear it. But always in the back of my head, I would wait to hear the voice of my old news editor. Oh, Adler.
Adler.
But that's how you learn.
Yes.
Right? It's whether in any pursuit, what your career as a
Yes.
banker, you learn from your mentors, my career in scholarship, or our times on the golf course.
Yes.
That's how you learn.
Yeah, it's not the easy route that gets you there.
Right.
Right.
That's
There
right.
would have been a lot of advisors that could have been a lot easier
Yes.
and more friendly, maybe. But did you end up having a friendship at the end of the day with him?
Very much. To my deep chagrin, he died before I was able to get out into my academic career.
Really?
Yes.
Before you became a doctor?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, he
Oh,
died
no.
right before I finished my dissertation.
Oh no.
Which meant that I had to find somebody else on the faculty to
Yeah.
supervise the
That'd
last
be
draft or so. And so we were so close, so that was very hard. I missed him very much.
Yes.
And I always wondered what might I've been able to do if he'd been alive to give me some advice and direction in my early years
Oh yeah.
as an academic. Yeah, so it was a great what if question.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I see such a theme in how you approach things that you're passionate about. Is you don't let go. You to this day, I mean, you still approach golf and your academic pursuits
Yeah.
as well as your journalism with that intensity.
Yeah.
To
With my
tenacity.
intensity, right?
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably too much. So, but you're right about that, Jeff. It's in my DNA.
Yeah.
If I become passionate about something, I want to know everything I can. I want to become as good in the field as I can be. So, I've kind of brought a scholarly interest to the study of the golf swing.
Yes.
So you're right. That's part of my personality.
Yeah.
I better undergo some therapy, I'm afraid.
Well, not everybody can hang with that either.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody wants to be as intense on those
I think
topics.
there's pills for that, right? For that intensity.
But like I said, you and I love to quote nerd out on
We do.
golf because we
Yeah.
bring that intensity together and love to
Yeah,
analyze it and
Yeah,
overanalyze it.
and analyze it again and again.
That's right.
I enjoy that. I think it sometimes befuddles our friends
Yes.
on the golf course.
Yeah.
I think they go ahead and go off in their own direction. But think of how much you and I have learned from each other by analyzing each other's swings and dissecting them in light of the instruction or what we've read over the course of our lives. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the other funny thing that strikes me is that by doing that, we've struck up this very nice friendship too.
Right.
In the pursuit, just
Mhm.
like you did with your mentor,
Yes.
by working on tough issues, and golf is one of the toughest. in my mind.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
You never arrive, as you say.
yes,
Yeah. So it's like one of our favorite golf books, Golf in the Kingdom.
yes,
Right? You have comradely adventuring. That's what we've shared
yes,
as we pursue better golf and talking about the history of the game and the greats. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I also think about your mentor and how you approach this with bravery. I mean, and a responsibility. It's part of your patriotism. I see, and how it's your duty to stand up to things that you don't see are right and to voice them, right?
Yeah, I think so. My mentor was fond of saying, when you come across difficult issues of criticism of government, even those governmental officials whom you admire,
Yes.
he said his line that I've embraced was, you have to stand up to the universe. You have to face up to the universe. This is the
Wow.
reality. You could shrink from it if that will make you feel better. But as a scholar, you're not going to be doing your duty. He was an intrepid scholar, and he was his view about constitutional issues on a number of fronts was often sought out by members of Congress, even those who did not agree with him. They still respected him. And I think that's probably the greatest compliment you can receive as a scholar, is that people seek out your views even if they disagree with your politics, for example.
Yeah.
So
Have you ever had that experience?
I have. Yes, I have. Yeah, I'm happy to say I have.
That's good.
Yes.
Glad I didn't walk into that.
I have had that. So it's so I've taken the position, which again I adopted from Professor Wormuth,
Yeah.
and that is that I don't, as a scholar, I don't have favorite horses. I don't have sacred cows. I view it as my duty to say what I think the Constitution means on any particular subject.
Mhm.
And that may not be consistent with my politics at times.
Okay.
I recognize that my own political values reflect something else other than what I find the Constitution to prescribe. And early on in my career, I learned then that I have to make a choice. I cannot distort constitutional findings to reflect my own partisan values, otherwise I would be a hack.
Yeah, you don't
Could
have
not-
that luxury.
Could not be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So that would mean, in that case, that I either have to change my views or I have to change the Constitution. And of course, it's a little bit harder to change the Constitution
Yes.
than it is my own views. Or sometimes it's hard work to help others understand that what I'm offering in terms of my constitutional insights or conclusions is not a partisan finding. And it's hard for a lot of people to understand that, because people have hard feelings about what they think the Constitution should mean
Mhm.
or does mean. And if they hear an interpretation that's not consistent with their politics, then they may decide to ignore you,
Yes.
ignore me in this case. So
Right.
it's a position that I've taken for as long as I came out of the gate, and I'm happy. Now, it may mean that you lose friends because people don't understand what you're saying, but I'm prepared to
Yeah.
be happy with that and to maintain my scholarly integrity. That's important too.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you have a different code you have to live by as a scholar.
I think so. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have the luxury to bend to whatever you feel personally that you want to do.
Yeah, to put it, how do I put it in mild terms? I can't prostitute myself to produce endings or conclusions
Right.
that suit powers that be. So I've had situations where I've confronted power and
Yes.
explained it. I was invited to give a lecture in New York at a conference on the Clinton presidency, and I admired Bill Clinton's politics and his views and values for many reasons. Didn't always agree with what he did,
Yes.
but there I was, arguing to an audience of 1,000 that President Clinton had violated the war clause of the Constitution, and he was sitting in the audience. That
He
was
was?
it was not the easiest thing I've ever done.
Somebody you admired.
Yeah, I think
Personally.
I think his politics were very, very good. But to criticize a former president to his face, we're not sitting as far as you are. He was 15 rows back or so.
Yes.
But I felt the pressure. But at any rate, that I couldn't think of myself as possessing any integrity if I didn't. But also by criticizing those governmental officials whom I admire, then it's a lot easier to criticize officials with whom I very much disagree or disagree with their behavior. So
Sure.
consistency is important, very
Yes.
important.
Curious, what was Bill Clinton's reaction? I'm sure you were looking at him.
I was looking at, he was pretty stone-faced, but I didn't have a chance to talk to him afterward, right?
Yes.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
But I did exchange books with his legal advisor afterward, who said he enjoyed my remarks, and so we corresponded for a while.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
neat.
so it was pretty nice. that was his impeachment manager, Lanny Davis. So,
Oh, wow.
but I think that's the point. And it's very important in our time as a means of trying to promote civility within the body politic. We have to be able to disagree politely, with courtesy, and still maintain some friendships. If we cannot do that, then we're essentially saying we are our politics. We might as well wear our politics on our sleeves, and then there's no such thing as having friendships with those whom we might disagree with. And I think about all the discord and the incivility in Congress and beyond, and I'm so reminded of some senators that I've had the opportunity to get to know over the years, and that would include Senator Al Simpson from Wyoming, a very Lincolnian figure.
Oh, really?
Former Senator Jim McClure of Idaho.
Yes.
Both deep conservatives, and even if we disagreed on issues, we maintained a friendship. Or I really appreciated Al Simpson's story. His best friend in the United States Senate in the 90s was Metzenbaum from Ohio, the most liberal member of the entire Senate. Simpson, one of the most conservative.
Yes.
They went to war on the floor of the Senate, but their families traveled together. They were best friends,
Yes.
so they could leave it on the floor. That's what friendship should be about, to be
Yes.
able to express your views, disagree if you must,
Yeah.
but maintain the friendship. That's what our country badly needs. Our country's at war with one another, and
Yeah.
we look askance at those who disagree with us.
Right.
And so it's tough to maintain a democracy in which we emphasize discussion and debate if people treat those with whom they disagree as their enemies. That's not good for democracy.
No.
Yeah.
No. So, I think about kind of my road, through my career. And I look back and I think, gosh, there's been a lot of failure, a lot of challenges. I mean, you're such a smart person. It's hard for me to believe that you've had a lot of challenges, but what do you look back at and you say, gosh, I just had to overcome? What are some of the biggest challenges that you?
Oh, I think the first thing to note is we're always going to fail more than we succeed. I think that's important. Hard to learn that as you're a kid growing up or at any point. It's like the guy who wins the batting title is going to fail to get a hit more often than he hits, right?
Yes.
So if we could learn that lesson in life. So I had many failures, things that I regret. I wish that as a kid growing up, I'd worked harder in the classroom. I regret that I hit bad shots at important points in golf tournaments.
Yes.
When I played tournament tennis as a kid, I regret that I didn't think better and think more quickly. I think we probably all have. I haven't read enough. I haven't written enough. Holy mackerel. Now you're getting me started. So basically what I'm saying is I'm a failure. I've had a few successes, but I'm a failure.
Yeah.
So I think that I think those are pretty common, but I think it's important if we can teach kids to understand you're going to strike out more often than you're going to hit the ball, right? And you're going to miss more putts than you're ever going to make.
Right, but you have to power through that.
And to your point, you learn by failure. You learn to become more successful, I think. Yeah.
Well, good. So as you look into the future, what's in it? Tell me what it looks like for Dr. Adler and your institute.
Yeah.
What's the future look like?
Well, I'm very excited about the Alturas Institute. We've grown a lot since we started it nearly 6 years ago.
Yes.
As you well know, our mission statement includes the promotion of gender equality, the promotion of the Constitution, civic education, equal protection. And so I'm very happy that we've been able to play an important role to help educate the public about the Constitution. We do that through Idaho, and then I work with school teachers across the country and deliver lectures, which is very gratifying to me. Our signature event, Conversations with Exceptional Women, a 2-day event that we hold in Sun Valley each September, has become very, very successful, I'm happy to say. And next year, we're so fortunate because Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has agreed to come. That's quite a centerpiece. And that enables us to draw other remarkable women who will want to participate with her for a few days. And it helps to broaden the stature and the reputation of the Alturas Institute, which I measure in part by the fact that we've been able to generate a few spin-off groups that have adopted our platform across the country, as far away as Boston, for example.
Wow.
And our program is expanding. So we're going into Jackson Hole, we're going into Las Vegas, into Austin,
Really?
and expanding here in Idaho. So of course we have a program, Conversations with Exceptional Women, here in Idaho Falls.
Yes.
And next week we're going into Twin Falls.
That's great.
So I like the organic growth, but I think what's most gratifying is that people perceive that we're making an impact in the pursuit of our mission goals, which again perfectly align with my own professional and personal interests. So I'm very lucky. And so we'll continue to do that. And I have more writing that I'm doing.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so I'm very happy to be writing this book on Reed versus Reed.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was public.
The iconic Idaho case in which the Supreme Court, for the very first time in 1971, struck down a statute on grounds of gender discrimination.
Wow.
It was a turning point case, as Justice Ginsburg has characterized it. That was very instrumental to the rise of her legal career, and I'm so proud that she's writing a foreword to the book.
Oh, that's great.
It pleases me to know
Yes.
that. So I'll continue to do what I'm doing, writing, speaking, trying to promote the mission goals of Alturas, and I hope, above all, trying to find a place for the Constitution in the hearts and minds of Americans everywhere. If we do that, we promote our democracy, we strengthen it, and citizens become stronger.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's win-win, I think.
It is. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, it's a pleasure to be with you, Jeff.
And
as always.
you know, as I think about our time together, how important it is to remember the friendships and have civil discord. We can disagree about politics,
right.
but maintain that civility. And I think about the kind of the gentleman that your professor mentor was. We have to maintain that in ourselves as we go through very troubling times sometimes.
Right.
And also I love the tenacity that you approach your whole life with. Your writing, your patriotism, your work on the Constitution, and my favorite, of course, golf.
Yes,
So,
that's right. Well, thank you.
yeah.
Very nice of you to say. I appreciate that.
Most of all, I appreciate your friendship.
Well, it's great to be with you again, my friend. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to Community Connections with Jeff Newgard, where every episode you hear unique stories of your neighbors, colleagues, friends, and community connections. You can find our podcasts on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and other popular platforms. Subscribe to our channel to keep up to date on all future conversations. Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.